thank you all. Thank you so much for taking your time to come and be here to be part of this conversation. I think there is no more important conversation to be in, because we're losing. We're losing every major ecosystem on the planet. You don't have to take my word for it. The Global Biodiversity Outlook 3, science by Dr. Tom Lovejoy of the Smithsonian, a lot of other scientists. 3 of the Earth's ecosystems are tipping into collapse. Coral reefs. Business as usual, there will be no living coral reefs on planet Earth, perhaps as early as 2050, certainly the end of this century. Sorry, scuba divers. We're losing the Amazon. This is a bit more serious. It's the Earth's lungs. And the oceans are acidifying. Now, why do we care what happens out in the oceans? We're land mammals. Those little calciferous critters called phytoplankton produce most of the oxygen on Earth, and if you acidify the ocean, the integrity of their shells goes away, and they don't produce oxygen for us. So if you're sentimental about breathing, this acidification of the ocean ought to be of concern to you. Now, in a sense, this has happened before on planet Earth twice that we know of, and 60 to 90% of species went extinct. George Carlin, the comedian, said, "Save the Earth will be fine. It'll shake us off like a bad case of fleas." What we're talking about is save the humans. Save life as we know it, which I rather like this human experiment. I think we ought to have a chance to hang around and see if we can make something of ourselves. And that's really what we're talking about. And it's why I'm particularly honored to get the CARE 2 award. I'm a member of CARE 2. I routinely click on their sign a petition and then watch month by month when the results come in, what they achieved. This citizens' movement is one of the things that gives me hope. Because if you look at the science, the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, where Kofi Annan said the very basis for life on Earth is declining at an alarming rate, or the Planetary Boundaries study by Stockholm Resilience Institute, again looking at the human activities that cannot go beyond certain boundaries before ecosystems as we know them collapse, and again we've exceeded 3 of them, with the rest heading for the red zone. You can get pretty discouraged. And I teach business at Bainbridge Graduate Institute up in Seattle. We just launched a new MBA in sustainable management at Bard. This will be in New York City. Particularly cool because we will have the whole of New York City as a living laboratory. And my students, I assign them all these readings, and they come to me and they say, "Are we going to make it?" Testable hypothesis. We don't yet know the answer to that. And part of what this is about, this whole movement of ours, is maintaining the hope, maintaining the capacity to believe that, yes, we can make it. And so crowdsourcing answers, crowdsourcing involvement is going to be one of those aspects that will determine whether or not we make it. So thank you. Thank you to CARE 2 for all that you do. If any of you are not members, CARE 2, go on the web and click on a petition that you care about. You don't have to do them all. Find the ones that resonate with you and become part of this community of millions of people around the world that are now tuning in and paying attention and taking action. Because our governments aren't getting it done. You know, we've got the Republican convention, the Democratic one coming up. The world's governments came together in Rio earlier this summer and did what? It was a good conference, I'm told. The scientists and the corporates who came had a great time talking with each other. And indeed, one of my other sources of hope are the corporates. If you'd have told me 5-7 years ago that the entity on the planet doing the most to drive sustainability would be Walmart, I'd have offered to eat my hat. Earlier this year, at Sustainable Brands down in San Diego, Walmart announced that they are now putting in place KPIs, key performance indicators, for their buyers. Their buyers will be judged, evaluated personally, on whether or not they are sourcing product for Walmart from companies that are more sustainable, that abide by the Walmart Sustainability Scorecard. What? Walmart has published a scorecard, 15 questions. Question number 1, do you measure your carbon footprint? Question number 2, do you report your carbon footprint to the Carbon Disclosure Project? Who? This is a group of kids out of the United Kingdom who about 10 years ago, just 'cause, sent out to the Financial Times 500 biggest companies on Earth, a little survey. What's your carbon footprint? As you might imagine, for the first few years, everybody ignored it. Meanwhile, the kids went around and got institutional investors, the big pension funds that are values-oriented, to back them. They're now backed by these institutional investors with $71 trillion in assets. Now, every major company on the planet reports annually their carbon footprint to the Carbon Disclosure Project. And when Walmart put it on the scorecard, I mean, that kind of sealed the deal. So here we have the big companies. The other entity that surprised the heck out of me was the US military. I've done a lot of work in Afghanistan, and when I was there, some of the provisional reconstruction teams found out I was there and emailed me, can we meet, please? And said things like, we're working in a village that has no electricity and no water. Is there any renewable energy technology that you know of that can be hand-built in Afghanistan that will deliver water to the village? So I emailed my engineers, and they sent me back a sketch of how to design a bicycle wheel vaned windmill water pumper that could be made in the villages. And indeed, that village got water. The major wrote back, hey Hunter, this is cool. There are now 2 forward operating bases in Afghanistan, at least, by now there may be more, that are 100% renewably powered. Why? Because most of the convoys coming over the Khyber Pass from Pakistan are carrying fuel oil, diesel, to run our bases. And for every 24 convoys, a Marine comes home in a body bag. So there are now Army bases, Fort Carson Mountain Post, there are a number of them around the country that have made a commitment by 2025 to be 100% renewably powered, to be zero waste. I'd have offered to eat my hat if you'd have told me the US military was going to be driving renewable energy, but 2 weeks ago they commissioned $7 billion worth of renewable energy to be installed on government land. Which is to say there is progress. It's not fast enough, but we have all the technologies that we need to solve all the problems facing us, if we'll implement them. And the other thing that gives me hope are the young people. I'm here with Russell Green from the I Matter campaign. This is a group of young people who have committed their lives to ending the threat of climate chaos, climate destruction. We've got a hurricane bearing down again on New Orleans. We have the biggest drought in the Midwest, ruining our corn crop. We have the lowest ice now in the Arctic ever on record, and the fastest melt time. And if you look around the planet at the climate chaos, what's interesting, assume it's a hoax. We are told this by a number of people who ought to know better, but assume it's a hoax. It turns out that if all you are is a profit-maximizing capitalist, you'd do exactly what you'd do if you were scared to death about climate change, because we know how to solve this problem at a profit. And the companies that are doing this are leading. When those wild-eyed environmentalists at Goldman Sachs tell you that the companies that are the leaders in environment, social, and good governance policy have 25% higher stock value than their less sustainable competitors? There's a business case. McKinsey found that for an average-sized company that reports to the Carbon Disclosure Project, there's $30 to $40 million below the line on the McKinsey cost abatement curve of profitable ways to save energy. My team walked into a company, 6,300 computers and monitors they left on 24/7 because of some urban myths. Shortens the life of the computer to turn it off and on? No. IT needs it left on? No. In that company, just publishing a policy, turn the darn things off if you're not sitting in front of them, would save the company $700,000 the first year. This is free money. And this is the opportunity that is now before us. So although I am seriously annoyed with both political parties and with most of the national government agencies, indeed around the world, organizations like the South Coast Air Quality Management District, who have for years been saying, we will have a higher quality of life if we have clean air, have been putting in place the kinds of regulations that actually are driving innovation in the corporate sector. Why is it that Germany has a reasonably healthy economy of all of Europe? Because they have very strong regulation around the environment. They have a very strong Green Party. California gets 70% more sunlight than cold, cloudy Germany, but last year Germany installed 28 times the amount of solar that we did here in California. Why? Germany has a national policy called a feed-in tariff. Here we call it a clean contract. They pay a fair price for green electricity. And as a result, Germany has created almost 500,000 new jobs in the solar sector. Next year, solar electricity will be cost competitive with grid electricity in Germany. It already is now, by the way, in Chile, where I was last week. Oh, you say, if you pay more for green electricity, it's going to raise our rates. Can't possibly do that. Deutsche Bank did a study. Yeah, it'll raise your rates, €2 to €3 a month, $50 a year equivalent, 8.6 billion euro in total in the first 4 years of the program per year. That sounds like a lot of money. What Deutsche Bank found, however, was if you do nothing, if you just keep burning coal, they would have paid 9.4 billion euro more. So sorry, you're going to pay more. You're going to pay less more if you have good policy than if you don't. Which is why organizations like the Air Quality Management District are such an important part of giving us a high-quality life, of protecting our health, and of driving our economy. Are you guys tired of the recession? We know how to get rid of the recession, unleash the green economy. And this is what I challenge you. In your lives, what are you doing every day to be a part of the green economy or to be a part of the brown economy, the gray economy, the old economy, the economy of the last century? When you make decisions every time you purchase something, where did it come from? Did a sustainable company make it or did a less sustainable company make it? What can you do in your own community to make a difference? What can you do in your home? I put a 5-kilowatt solar system on my ranch. When the power goes out, I still have power. I have a higher quality of life and free electricity for the rest of my life. We can do this if we come together. It's a big world. It's a very big world. I just flew north to south in the hemisphere. It's a very big world. We're not going to do it without online communities. And again, it's why Care To is so important. Join an online community. Tweet. Go on Facebook. Communicate to the world. What you do in your life is the most important signal to the 20 or so people who look at you. Each one of us has a community of people some larger, some smaller, but they're 10 to 20 for all of us that pay attention to what we do with our lives. And when you change your life, it changes your group. When you communicate, it changes what happens in the world as a whole. Time is very short. We simply must act and act with all the conviction in our hearts. Organizations like Women in Green, pulling women together to have these conversations, critically, critically important. Thank you. And to all of the corporate sponsors, thank you. You guys are part of this new economy that, if we unleash it, will give us the greatest prosperity ever. If we fail to, the future will be very grim. We aren't going to like living in a world of climate crisis. And we don't have to. I rather like the line from Lord of the Rings when Gandalf said, "The rule of no realm is mine, but all worthy things that are in peril as the world now stands, those are my care. And for my part I shall not wholly fail. If anything passes through this night that can still grow fair and bear fruit and flower again in the days to come. For I too am a steward, did you not know?" Doesn't matter if you're an elected official, doesn't matter if you're the head of a company. Each one of us can be that leader. And remember, in the story, it was the fun-loving, unassuming little hobbits who took on their shoulders this awesome task. And they were scared, they didn't know where they were going. But in the end, all the kings and warriors and wizards could just stand by as the little people saved the world. I think real leadership is extraordinary courage by ordinary people. I'm deeply honored that you have asked me here today, that you have bestowed this really great honor on me. Thank you, and I'll do my best to live up to it. Thanks.